Okay, this is a big topic,
Yeah.
and something that I was very excited to dig into the research on. So what I've noticed is that a lot of what is talked around in terms of skill focuses on the when you get really good at it part. Like,
Mm.
what does it take to become a gold medalist at the Olympics, or chess world champion, or whatever? And the answer to that is a lot of practice over a very long period of time. I don't think that part is necessarily a mystery. The thing that fascinates me is that, say there's something you want to learn how to do. Maybe this is something for work. Maybe this is something for your personal life or for fun. How do you go from knowing nothing, no experience, no knowledge, no skill whatsoever, to being pretty good, maybe not world class, but pretty good in a very short period of time? And so this became another one of my research projects, which was digging into the literature and research on skill acquisition and figuring out how can we do this well and how can we do it faster.
Mm.
The first thing that's really important to understand is that knowledge and skill are two completely different things. So knowledge is ideas in your head, having some conceptual understanding of what a topic is, how it works. So, for example, The Personal MBA is a book about business knowledge. It's helping upgrade the business software in your brain, for lack of a better analogy. So when you get to the practice of doing business, you have a working set of knowledge to draw from that will help you make better decisions. That's the whole point. That is not business skill. Business skill comes about, or skill in anything for that matter, comes about as a result of practicing what you want to do in specific ways. So being able to perform a specific task in the world in a reliable, consistent, repeatable way. And skill is one of those areas that has a deep research literature that isn't really talked about very much. And it's fascinating, because what the research literature says is that the point of our most rapid improvement happens at the very beginning.
Mm.
So if you think about improvement in performance per unit time, that is concentrated at the beginning. You can go from nothing to being reasonably good in a very, very short concentrated period of time if you do it well, if you do it consistently. And so for me, the question became, okay, like, well, what does that look like? It's not years, it's not months. It's about 20 hours of focused practice. And the valuable thing about this to know is that it's universal and generalizable. So it doesn't matter what you're learning. Could be a physical or a motor skill, could be a cognitive skill. So say something like programming or touch typing, things like that. Touch typing is kind of a cognitive motor skill combined, which is cool. Or like, so think like chess is the example of a mental skill, purely mental skill. So the really cool thing about this is there's a way to going about learning something that you want to learn how to do in a focused, efficient, effective way. And the end result of that is going from knowing absolutely nothing to being reasonably good in a short period of time. And the best part of that is that, kind of similar, we were talking earlier about businesses. People get frustrated way too early.
Mm.
They say, well, I'm obviously not good at this. And then they put it aside, or they quit their podcast in the first month because they don't have enough listeners, that kind of thing. This is a universal thing around skills, particularly adult learners, because adult learners are not used to feeling dumb, are not comfortable feeling like they're not performing well. It's very, very frustrating. And adults, contrary to kids, if you ever watch a kid on a skateboard just like throw themselves at the thing over and over and over again, and they crash and fall and they laugh and they just get back up and do it over again. That's a very constructive response to learning a new skill. But adults don't tend to approach it that way. We're like, try to do something, it doesn't work out. It's like, man, just not good at this. Just don't have the talent. Shouldn't waste my time. I should go do something that I'm better at doing. What's really interesting, I call this in the first 20 hours, I call this the frustration barrier. So for adult learners, the first few hours of practice are almost always just pure hell. Absolutely frustrating. You want to give up very early because you have an idea in your head of what skill looks like. You know what you're supposed to be able to do. And the contrast between that and watching yourself do this thing for the first time is often very extreme. And so for adult learners, there's this barrier there's a certain amount of frustration that you are going to experience and that you have to get through in order to get to the point where you're performing reasonably well. And the reason I use reasonably well as a threshold is when you're performing reasonably well, that's when things start to be more fun. That's when things start to be more interesting because you see yourself doing this thing that you want to be able to do. And that's kind of cool. And you want to keep doing that and see how far you can push it. So that first 20-ish hour period is absolutely critical in terms of your ability to do this thing at all. But then once you're able to push through that frustration barrier, the rest of the improvement process becomes much easier. And so I focused the research in the first 20 hours about that critical early learning period. How do you push through the frustration barrier? How do you get as good as possible, as quickly as possible, so it goes from being frustrating into being fun and interesting?